The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. So glad you could join us today. Welcome. My name is Benita Pedersen, and I'm with the Alberta Conservative Association. I'm also with allfiredupforfreedom.com, and I'm part of events and initiatives that support the protection and restoration of individual rights, individual freedoms, and individual responsibilities. I started as an activist in February of 2021. At that time, the government was imposing some restrictions that concerned me. And so I started organizing, promoting, and hosting protests. For my hard work and my activism, I received 10 tickets from the RCMP. That's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They gave me ticket after ticket. I received 2 in Westlock, Alberta, 2 in Barrhead, Alberta, 2 in Whitecourt, Alberta, 2 in Bonnyville, Alberta, 1 in Athabasca, Alberta, and 1 in Peace River, Alberta. Interestingly enough, I also hosted protests in Edmonton, Alberta, but I never received any tickets from Edmonton Police Services. That's Edmonton Police Service jurisdiction. The RCMP don't deliver tickets there. So it was just interesting that the RCMP would ticket me, but not Edmonton Police Services. One of the things I've learned is that when we are concerned about government legislation at any level of government, federal, provincial, municipal, we need to take action. We cannot be apathetic. We cannot sit and do nothing. I've also learned that complaining alone is not enough. And if we just vent online, that's not enough either. Yes, it's important to share information online. And all of you who have been sharing information online, I appreciate that you're doing it. However, it's not enough. We need to take strategic, coordinated action so that we can achieve policy change and policy enforcement. I started with this topic of geoengineering back in January of this year. Previous to that, my activism was focused on other topics, such as the COVID-19 restrictions, and I was also focused somewhat on healthy boundaries for children. I hosted the 1 Million March for Children event in September of 2024 and September of 2023 in Edmonton, Alberta. There's some things I've learned about activism. We can do protests and marches and convoys. We can have signs. There's lots of things we can do. We can do petitions. We can set up meetings with elected representatives. We can write to elected representatives. We can phone them and leave them messages. We can also consider running for office. We can also consider helping the campaigns of those we believe in. Even if we ourselves aren't running for office, we can be supporting at least one campaign in every election, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal. This year here in Alberta, Canada, we have some major elections. Right now, there's a federal election. In fact, we go to the polls on April 28th across Canada. Or if you want, you can vote earlier than that. You don't have to wait until April 28th. This year is also an important year for Alberta. We have our municipal elections happening on Monday, October 20th. If we do things right between now and October 20th, we could transform every municipal council and school board across the province, and we could get some policies changed and work on policy enforcement. So I'm so glad you could be here today to be a part of this important topic addressing geoengineering. We have a couple of different guest presenters booked for today, and they're going to be sharing with us not just about geoengineering, but also about carbon capture and how carbon capture relates to geoengineering. So what I request you do right now is in the chat box for me, please write where you are from. It really helps me to know where people are from. So if you could just put that in the chat box, then that would just be super. It helps me have a better understanding of who's here today, and it also helps our presenters. So you write, perhaps you're from Alberta and you're from a town or a city or a village or hamlet or county in Alberta, feel free to write that. Perhaps you're from outside the province. If you're from a different province or even from the States, please write that in the chat box. It's good to see we have some guests here from the USA and from all over Alberta, and actually quite a few from British Columbia. So this is really, really nice. I'm so glad that you're all tuning in for this important presentation. Now, a couple of things I'd like to share with you is some things I feel we need to be celebrating about progress with regards to geoengineering. So one of the items to celebrate is that there are more and more Facebook pages and websites popping up promoting people who believe in blue skies. So one of those is Chemtrail Crusaders in Edmonton. Another is actually this one here. There's an anti-geoengineering Scotland group. And so they even have an event coming up on April 5th. Anti-geoengineeringscotland.com is their website. So I look at this and I am very encouraged by this to see that there are more and more groups popping up to express concerns about these issues. Now, another item I like to celebrate is House Bill 2063 of Tennessee. And you can read about House Bill 2063 of Tennessee by just going online and looking it up. But here's a bit of information for you. It was introduced in January of 2024. Later in 2024, it passed at the House level, passed at the Senate level, and then it was signed into law. And it became law July 1st of 2024. So this is great momentum for the people who believe in blue skies. House Bill 2063 in Tennessee. This bill reads, as enacted, prohibits the intentional injection, release, or dispersion by any means of chemicals, chemical compounds, substances, or apparatus within the borders of the state of Tennessee into the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight. So this is good news. This is a step in the right direction. There are some people who support blue skies that feel that this bill doesn't go far enough. And that's fair enough. I can appreciate where you're coming from. But we all need to recognize that there's a victory that's happened here in this bill being passed. And this is part of an amazing momentum. So House Bill 2063, make sure you get a chance to look it up. So here's just another write-up about it. By the way, each House bill is generally attached to a Senate bill. So HB stands for a House bill. If we compare that to Canada, in Canada, the House in the States is a lot like Legislative Assembly in a province in Canada. So when we're dealing with a Tennessee, say we visited with Tennessee State Representative Monty Fritz at our meeting back in February, he is a lot like a member of Legislative Assembly in Alberta or in BC. And so it's just similar there in how things are done. And so for something to become law, it has to pass as a House bill and a Senate bill. That's as I understand it. And if If there is someone out there who wants to correct me, I welcome that. So in case you're wondering some of the history of this, Senate Bill 2691 passed in the Senate on Monday, March 18th of 2024, and then House Bill 2063 passed on April 1st of 2024. The bill states, as I quoted earlier. So this is just really great momentum. Well, there's so much more great momentum. In Florida, there is a senator by the name of Ileana Garcia. And Ileana Garcia is supporting a bill known as Senate Bill 56. Now, this has partially passed, but it hasn't gone all the way yet. So this is just another example of the momentum that's happening in the United States right now. And one of my goals is to see similar momentum in Canada. I suspect it's going to start with the province of Alberta and then influence other areas of Canada. Or perhaps some of you from other provinces want to have a race with me to see which of us can get some legislation initiated first using our contacts that we've been making, etc. So I encourage you to review these bills, be inspired by what's been happening in the United States. Even though some of the bills are not yet law, we can still review them and learn from them and hopefully get similar or even better legislation passed in at least one area in Canada and then other areas. It's sort of like that snowman thing. You know how you roll a small ball of snow and then you roll it and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. And if we're on a hill, it might just go rolling down the hill and get super, super big. If just one of us can get that ball rolling by working with our MLAs or even our MPs, it can have all sorts of momentum. So what's going on in the States is sure to inspire us. And so I hope you're feeling inspired. I'm certainly feeling inspired. And another thing I'm feeling inspired by is the guest presenters that we have here today. Our first presenter is from an area in California known as Tuolumne, I hope I said that right, County in California. And she is a full-time researcher. And I don't mind saying she knows much more than I do. I've personally just started deep diving into this topic in January. She's been deep diving into this topic much, much longer. And at the end of her presentation, I'm going to share with you the link to her Substack so you can find out more about her work and her research. So on Substack, she goes by the name Mellowcat. Some people also call her Catherine. And when I was researching where she's from, Tuolumne County, I learned that in that county is where Yosemite National Park is located. And so I guess my first question, Mellowcat, is have you been to Yosemite National Park?
I sure have, and it is just beautiful out here. I relocated out to the mountains about 2.5 years ago now. And so I've had a chance to get away from the years of 2020 when, as you know, we were fighting back against the, experimental use products, and started growing a garden and raising chickens and trying my best to get away from the cell tower infrastructure that was rolling out, the surveillance cameras, the city feel, the concrete jungle, and the mentality. So I'm on a nice little plot of land. And it was when I was outside starting my garden that I then became very proactive in this geoengineering research.
I am
I'd always
so
been
glad.
aware. Yeah, well, I'd always been aware. I had been watching the sky for close to a decade. And I had been observing the grid patterns that would then diffuse throughout the day. And then around 3-4 o'clock, it would be just a total whiteout. And I found that it was only because I had my son and I was at home and I had a chance to slow down and observe the skies that I knew something was wrong. And I began investigating a little bit about 10 years ago when I mentioned it to a cashier and I said, do you notice this? This is driving me crazy. All these grids in the sky. And she said, yeah, those are chemtrails. And that led me into a little bit of research. I learned about Dane Wigington. I started to become a little bit more informed. That I didn't know that Rosalind Pedersen had been fighting this for decades before I even woke up to the fact that there was something actually happening up there. And so let me just say I'm not an expert. I can only speak to my own observations and my own data collection. So when I was out here building my garden, I was dismayed to realize, oh, I can escape all those other things in the city, but I can't escape what they're doing in the air above my head. And especially since I care about food quality and organic foods and the health of my family, I realized that it was beyond ignoring anymore. I would try to bring it up and I was so ostracized and marginalized and nobody wanted to hear it. So I didn't push it. I was more interested in fighting during 2020, just, our right to refuse and those things. And so I realized about 2.5 years ago, it's time for me to put this on the table. It's time for people to normalize this conversation because it's quite clear that something's wrong. Something's happening. I wanted to find out what is happening, who's doing it, and better yet, what's in my water? What am I breathing in? Is this something I should be concerned about? So I started taking rain samples, and I'm going to try to make this brief, slow me down, ask me to clarify or come back to something if you need to. Okay, Benita. But I started taking rain samples just to find out, okay, what's in my rain? And I took a total of about just over 20 samples on my own. I had to do the research, like what lab do I use? What metals do I test for? And then when I got the results, what do these results mean? How do I read the analytical report? What is it to have this many micrograms per liter of this metal? And I found consistently aluminum, a little bit of barium and strontium, but still it was in there, elevated amounts of, so a lot of aluminum, a lot of titanium, which was surprising, copper, magnesium, zinc. So there were quite a few, even vanadium was in there. So then began my journey into figuring out, well, what are the inhalation limits? Where are these metals coming from? Because aluminum is in the Earth's crust. It's only mined and used in food or in packaging or, so why is there aluminum in my sky? And so I began doing a lot of research. I drowned myself in science papers trying to figure it out, doing the conversions and the calculations, how many parts per billion with, and all these different conversions. And then I finally realized I need to ask my air pollution control district and see if they have any answers. Maybe there's some emissions in my area that are polluting the skies. Come to find out, our local air pollution control district had one person. They did not have a hearing board. In California, we are required to have, we have 35 air districts. They're required to have a hearing board made up of 2 members of the public, an attorney, a medical professional, and an engineer. They have not had one for at least 5 years. So they could be held accountable legally in some way, or it could put them in legal hot water. I'm not sure how. I don't know how to file the appropriate paperwork. I wish I could have some support with that. But what I found was nobody was paying attention to the emissions in our county. And then I took it up to the next level. I went to the California Air and Resources Board. And I'm sure in Canada, you probably have some agency that oversees the pollutants, right? The ozone, the particulate, and they should probably measure for certain things. Come to find out, they're not testing for aluminum and many of the metals in my rain samples because their excuse was, well, we're not aware of any emission of concern, so we don't test for those metals. So that was concerning for me to find out that our California Air and Resources Board, like many other environmental organizations today, are more concerned with carbon emissions than they are with the ongoing assault with the metals that are in the flares. That leads me into really quickly, the flares. They like to say, oh, cloud seeding is just silver iodide. It's safe. We've used it forever. It's not a big deal. Well, I've came to find out that that's not entirely accurate. The flares contain heavy metals, aluminum and zinc. Those are used as propellants within the flare. They have ejectable flares and burn-in-place flares. And actually, the flares are comprised of 70% roughly aluminum and zinc and ammonium perchlorate, and then the rest is silver and copper, okay? And now I also am aware that in the United Arab Emirates and also in the United States, they've been using titanium dioxide nanoparticles. So that makes me wonder, have they changed up the formula? Are they using titanium dioxide nanoparticles in the flares over me? I still don't have those answers. I'm waiting to get those answers. I've been stonewalled for a long time. It's been incredibly frustrating trying to do all of this learning and to realize that, again, they're preoccupied with brand new goals that have been handed down to them from the top. It's all about carbon emissions now, right? We have to starve the world of carbon to save the planet, which is quite silly because, as we all know, plant life depends on carbon. And so I'm going to lead into now an example of what's happening. So there is a brand new market called carbon capture and storage. And when you look into this, this is a global initiative. It's become the new focus. It's almost like it was created out of thin air. Like, we're going to create a problem. We're going to make this sound real scary. We have to get our carbon emissions down. And so what they've done now is there is a brand new market for carbon capture and storage projects. And they've made it a little game. We are going to now incentivize you to say that you're carbon neutral. So you can either cut your emissions or be taxed more for your emissions, or you can buy or offset your carbon offset. You can offset your carbon emissions by purchasing carbon credits. Now, here is something I discovered in my county. I learned that Bill Gates's Breakthrough Energy Ventures gave $6.6 million to a small company called Kodama Systems, Inc. Now, Kodama is not a local company. In fact, they have an iPostal address in my county out of the Staples building. I don't know where the founders of this company actually live. My friends who are real estate agents say that they live in, I think it was Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, okay? So they've received a hefty amount of funding, and what they do is they operate remotely these semi-autonomous skidders out in the hard-to-reach parts of the mountain. And then I discovered what they were doing. They're cutting down our trees, and then they're trucking our trees to Nevada, and they're burying the trees in earthen vaults to store the carbon. And then what they're doing is they're selling those carbon credits back to the big mega monster corporations like Alphabet Inc., which is, as you know, Google and so many other little subsidiary companies. They're selling it back to Meta, which is Facebook. They're selling it back to Stripe. So what I'm finding is that, and there's this whole new market, and really who's benefiting? It's not the people. They're cutting down our trees. They talked about thinning 70 million acres of woods out in like Oregon, California, Washington. I learned about stump to pump fuels. They're trying to now sell biomass as a new biofuel. They want to take the rounds and the stumps, and they want to use algae, and they want to use farm waste to create these biofuels. And how this links to this whole chemtrail, contrail situation is that they've had a goal for quite a while now, and this is what they do. Again, to support this new market. Instead of actually tackling the problem at hand, which is clearly there are agencies out there that are experimenting in our skies. We know because of all the literature, the globalist think tanks that talk about it, that have meetings about it. They've talked about the deployment of solar radiation management needing to be as secret as the Manhattan Project. So a lot of these people that are involved, kind of like Kristen Megan, I believe, the whistleblower who was approving the chemicals but never had actually tested the chemicals for herself. So you have a lot of people involved that have no idea what they're a part of, like the Manhattan Project, secret and compartmentalized. And so instead of addressing the issues of what they've been pumping into our atmosphere, under the guise of we want to save the planet, we need to stop the warming, we want to dim the sun, which, by the way, as you know, is bad for human health, horrible for plant health, with whatever metals they're using and other chemicals and concoctions. They're always researching. They don't have the answers of whether this is safe and effective. They just have been rolling out experiments for a long time. I think the way they're getting away with this too, by the way, is they call it research. So there's all of this research happening, right? So and they talked about the marine cloud brightening needing to be also done privately. As you know, in Alameda, California, off the USS Hornet, they did this whole experiment for, I think they started, it was for a 2-month duration, but then we had enough public outcry and the local representatives were unaware that this was happening. And when it was brought to their attention and there were enough angry people, they finally had to stop the project. So there is power in using your voices and saying, we don't consent, we don't like this. You bring it to the attention of your local representatives and you demand that they address, why haven't we been notified? Why are you allowing this? We did not consent to this. That's very important. Now, back to the carbon and the biofuels. If you look into carbon capture and storage, you're going to find that the players behind it, there's a Global Carbon Capture and Storage Institute, okay? And they say right on their first page, you scroll through, and the partners and the players are large governments and transnational corporations, and it's all the Rockefeller oil and gas companies. It's Shell, ExxonMobil, Toshiba, so on and so forth. So it's not like we're actually going to stick it to the big oil guys, you know, and the polluters. And they've lied to us before. If I can just say, you know, remember the Rockefellers lied about recycling. If you can look into that, just look up the Rockefeller recycling lies. They didn't want people to stop buying plastic. So what they did was they pretended buy more plastic and you could recycle all of these special plastics. It's sort of the same thing. It's like they created a new market. They're telling everyone that this is for the benefit of the planet. It's healthier, it's safer, it's using waste products that we don't need. It's totally innovative. And I think what we're going to find is that it's a great scam, and it might even be more polluting than what we already have. And I'm finding that people, there are some messages out there. People are saying, well, all of commercial aviation, all of these flights are responsible for the dimming of the sun. I agree that jet pollution is pollution. So is automobile pollution. So are so many other forms of pollution. But to me personally, it's very clear based on all of you have to connect the dots. You have to see how they talk about the governance, the global governance, the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. They talk about one atmosphere. Again, they've been talking about this for a very long time. I don't doubt that they've been experimenting for a long time. As we know, only decades after the experiments have been done, then we're notified that, oh, we sprayed you with bacteria to see if, you know, how you'd survive a bioweapons attack, right? So my concern is that people are talking about, oh, well, it's wonderful. The FAA and NASA, who's fraudulent, by the way, they have acknowledged that all of these commercial flights are problematic. And so we're going to acknowledge that we need to do something about it. So we're going to look into aircraft emissions, and we're going to find out, we're going to experiment with, you know, sustainable aviation fuel. They call it SAF, okay? And some places call it synthetic aviation fuel. Others call it sustainable aviation fuel. And if you actually speak to people that understand biofuels, they're not necessarily cleaner or greener, no matter how many green leaves they put on the logo, okay? So this is kind of how this carbon capture is going to play into this, because the goal for them is to put planes, trains, and automobiles on all of this new market of biofuel. And they're distracting us from real solutions, which is, in my opinion, identifying the fact that we have had decades-old cloud seeding operations happening that have gone unchecked, unacknowledged, and denied until the last few years. They've started admitting it. And we have cumulative impacts of metals that have never been acknowledged in environmental impact reports. That needs to change. So that's something I've been working on out here. The cloud seeding operation over my head in particular has been relying on an environmental impact report that was done in 1990. And they had concerns in that report. They were going to be flying over Yosemite at some parts. And how could this impact, you know, these protected areas? And they were like, well, we think it's relatively safe. We think that we really want to provide water more than anything. So we're going to take the risk to get the water. And, you know, it's pretty pathetic. So again, it's on us to be informed and aware of the projects happening on the local level, getting the information through Public Records Act requests, or whatever you call it in Canada, and demanding answers from these so-called experts and representatives in the field that, you know, and to find out, you know, what are they going to do about it? So that was a mouthful, but I love questions. And then if you know, and I can talk more about anything.
Okay, so for those who have questions for Mellowcat, please place your questions in the chat and I will do my best to get those questions to her. We'll do question and answer with Mellowcat for approximately 10 minutes or so, and then we'll go on to our next presenter. Then Mellowcat, just so you're aware, my hope is that you can stick around for the next presenter's presentation, and we'll do a panel discussion after if you have time for that. If
Wonderful.
not, I do understand. Now, one of the questions to you, Mellowcat, is how can they legally be doing this?
Oh, which part? The cloud seeding or the carbon capture scam?
Speak to both.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of how corrupt our judges are. You know, everyone's part of these private clubs that are backed by NGOs and billionaires. And so I think, if I may speak frankly, I think that the system is so broken and corrupt and lost. And nobody's thinking critically, nobody's asking tough questions, nobody's truly curious anymore. And so they've been able to get away with it unchecked for a long time. And that changes when we start to recognize the problem, identify the players, and then hold them personally responsible and call them out. They don't like to be exposed. So I encourage people to identify the CEOs of these companies, the lead chief scientists, that whoever's involved in these projects, get to them, name them, call them out, call them on the phone, do the Public Records Act request, and then expose them. And my hope, though, is that, you know, unfortunately, attorneys cost a lot of money. And I'm actually tired of donating toward lawsuits, because I don't find over the last 5 years that the lawsuits have been as impactful as I would like. I'll tell you that from personal experience, by going directly to the managers that are making the decision or the heads of the companies and calling them out by name and speaking to them on the phone and putting their name and their faces everywhere for people to understand who's doing what, that they're more likely to make an adjustment, because suddenly they're on the line. It's no longer, they can't hide behind their company or their logos anymore. Now their names and faces, they are the ones that are responsible. So that is a key for me. I think if people could put in more time to figuring out, well, who are the players behind this particular company, right? And how do I get in touch with them? And if I can't get in touch with them, how do I let everybody that's in a local position understand what they're doing? You know, I've looped my board of supervisors in on all of my exchanges. I'm documenting the incompetence by having this ongoing written exchange. I ask questions, they show me they don't have the answers. I ask more questions. I urge them to do something, like do the testing or do this or that. And if they don't respond or they stonewall me, I'll send them a follow-up and say, I still haven't heard back on these questions and how you plan on proceeding. And it's a fine dance. Also, I ran in January, I applied for the hearing board in my county. And it is now March, almost the end of March, and they still have not selected the hearing board. They have been stonewalling on this as well, even though they have been negligent in having a hearing board, as they should have by law, according to the California Air and Resources Board. So we'll see where this goes. But I could use some help from an attorney with a good heart to write the nasty letters.
Good to know. Thank you, Malakas.
But before the next question, will everyone write this down if you're all Canadian, which I assume you are? I did a quick search here just before jumping on, and look up the Canada Growth Fund, and you'll see they have partnered with Svante, Svante Technologies Inc., Svante, and it's a leading global carbon capture and removal solutions provider, and they're headquartered out of Vancouver. I will send you a link here once I text it to myself. And they are investing in all sorts of things. They're trying to prioritize opportunities in the Canadian pipeline, okay? They want to have, it's all about carbon capture and removal technology. So look into them if you're in Canada. I'm sure you're going to find more projects when you type in carbon capture Canada, carbon storage Canada, and you'll find probably links. And then you can always look at partners of companies. So if you look up Svante or the Canada Growth Fund, you might be able to find other partners and players that are involved. And of course, it's always about appealing to their stakeholders. And Canada Growth Fund will invest up to $100 million in Svante via convertible notes aimed at advancing the development of Svante's innovative carbon capture technology. Okay, so I just want you to know that that's happening in your neck of the woods. And they say if they're looking to address the climate crisis. We can't talk about climate change and a climate crisis until we address the fact that we have been knowingly sprayed with toxic adulticides, herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, which then accumulates in the brush and in the ground, which I believe leads to the hotter, faster burning fires, along with other things. And also, when you're cloud seeding if you or doing solar radiation management, it is possible to induce drought. If they've been seeding for over 30 years, there is no excuse for them to say, well, California, we have to bring you water. You've been in a drought for so long, because as it's been stated, you can induce drought And what happens when you dry out an area for a long time and then you hit it heavy with a bunch of rain is you cause flooding. And isn't that convenient for eminent domain?
No kidding. Let's talk a bit about identifying the companies, the individuals responsible for this, identifying suspicious aircraft. So, for example, there's a website called Flight Radar 24.
Yes, there are many different flight tracking websites you can use. And I would like everyone here to know I do have a free tutorial. It's called My First Zoom, How to Use Flight Radar. It's on my Substack. And what I do is I show you how to go look on the map like this. And I should do it myself, but I'll just tell you, I'll show you how to zoom in on the map to your area. Start simple, start over your home or where you live. And you can just tap on an aircraft. And I recommend you do it on a browser. You do not need to download the app. You can actually just put in flightradar24.com in your browser. Okay. You can do this on your phone browser as well. And then you can tap on an aircraft and there will be a little pop-up window that'll show you where it's cut, where it took off, where it's going. And then you scroll down a ways and you'll get the registration number. And it's usually starts with the letter N, at least in the United States. In Canada, it starts with the letter C. And so then what I've done is I've taken that unique registration number and I've gone to our federal, FAA website to look up who it's registered to. And Benita, at some point I shared the Canadian version. You can go there and you can type in the C number for Canada and you can find out what type of aircraft it is, the specifications, and then you scroll down further and you get the registered owner. And then from there, it might be an LLC, it might be a company you don't recognize. Sometimes you'll find shell companies. Sometimes you'll find these aircraft are registered to a trust out of Delaware, which then hides the corporations or the billionaires behind that particular aircraft activity. So it will take sometimes a little more investigation. But what I have found is that there have been multiple flights where I have looked up the company on the FAA registration website after getting that unique registration number off of Flight Radar, if it's there. And then I have looked up the company online and I end up finding a contact number. And I'll call and I'll say, hello, I'm inquiring about N245BL. Whatever the registration number is. And I'll say, I see it took off here and it's doing this and it flew over here. And I'm just wondering, what are you doing? And sometimes they'll say, oh, we're doing a training flight for firefighters. Or they'll say, we are, we're doing an herbicide spray. Or we are just taking a joyride, it's flight school. You can find out a lot this way. Always be polite because you're looking for information, but that is one way you can be very proactive in identifying the aircraft. And again, in my tutorial, I break that down. And also, Benita, in the future, I'll invite you again, but I will have another one. So once you've played around with it a little bit, if you're struggling, come on with me and we can talk about the patterns that I've learned to identify and go from there.
Okay, super. This is just great. One of our attendees is asking about the best terms to use for sky spraying.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's various terms floating around out there.
I'll be straightforward.
Chemtrails, etc. What's the best terms?
I casually use chemtrails with my chemtrail community because we all know what it means. It's short and sweet and to the point. If you're speaking with representatives or legislators, you want to use terms like geoengineering, precipitation enhancement. I hope this is recorded, Benita, and people can write this down. Solar radiation management. You could just say geoengineering or weather modification, because either one should fit the bill. But if you say chemtrails, for most people, they have been taught to shut it down and turn it off and not even listen.
Okay, thank you. Another question we have is, are some of these substances flammable?
Well, if you look into metals and how flammable like aluminum oxide is or magnesium or zinc oxide or copper, it's up to you to determine, but yes, they are flammable.
Yes. And then when we're talking about how geoengineering and carbon capture are connected, so for some people it's difficult to understand that connection. Can you just expand a bit more on that connection?
Yes, the only connection there's no real direct connection. They're not, there's no way that they're actually, so what they'd like to do is they'd like to research using the carbon capture biofuels. For example, I'm just going to go to this website. I should put a link in the chat. They want to, let me go right here. For the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge Roadmap, they want to take the carbon from feedstock production, wood biomass, oil seed and biomass crops, algae and ag residue. They want to take that and convert that into sustainable aviation fuel. And then they want to turn it into the product. The end use would be powering the plants, powering the towers, the planes. And their goal, Benita, is to get all of our airlines onto this biofuel by 2050. Now, what I find very fascinating is how some people out there that claim to be fighting this are saying, well, don't pay any attention to these covert programs. Don't bother looking into it. It's all just the commercial flights. Let me just speak from experience and intuition. We've learned to just deny our own intuition and what we can see with our own eyes. You know when something's wrong when I'm in the hills, so I can see from far east to far west, okay? And when that trail is thick and it bleeds and spreads across the sky and that is not simply ice crystals. And when people try to say, well, it's just that we have to fly less to see the stars by 2050, I take a real issue with that, because that fits in with the global goals, the grand challenges that are usually started and initiated by people like Gates and people like the United Nations and all the businesses that stand to profit by getting you to think that, oh, our commercial fuel is so terrible, we just have to now experiment with using biofuels, and we're going to convert all of the fleet to this sustainable aviation fuel. Doesn't that feel good, everybody? Just wait another 25 years and then we'll find out that it actually didn't really do anything. It was just the bait and switch.
Was there something on screen you wanted to share with us, Melissa?
Oh, I was just, I could go to the, okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet. Try share screen. Try again.
I will do that. Okay, let me go to share screen. Hold on. Oh shoot, where is my share screen on your, oh, there we go. Found it. Here we go. Okay, I can share this here, and then I'm happy to share. So this is the action areas for the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge Roadmaps. They talk about it here. This is just the visual I wanted to show you. It's the roadmap. There are so many roadmaps. They always give you the scenarios, right? They roll it out before they do it. And then if you can still see this window, let me see. Okay, hold on. They're asking to admit somebody into the room. I'm just going to move this. Okay. Can you see my screen as I switch to Kodama?
Yes.
So they actually have now, they're promoting people working from, oh, please get me home to this, because you can see them. They're working from home now remotely. And they use satellite and LiDAR. They need very few people actually out in the field. You could do this from a faraway place. They do it at night. They take their semi-autonomous skidders out into your woods and they cut down your trees, and you can do it like this on your little console. And they're cutting down the trees. We've completely lost touch. You could have somebody doing this from Korea. That's just an example. So it's really, you have to just, and follow the money. I mean, this is, they always call it, it's for remote forest operations. I want to tell you about another thing that's happening too with all of this. They are now creating, they're creating a market. I'm going to stop the share now so you can actually let these people, there's some people that I needed to admit, I think, but how do I stop the share? I don't know. Oh, well, can you stop the share and bring it back to you?
There is a red stop share.
I found it. There we go. Shoot, I just lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So apparently in Southeast United States, a company called Drax was out there making all of these promises about forest resiliency. You'll hear this term a lot. And we have the social and ecological resilient landscape project out here, but it's not, I mean, they're dousing our forests in herbicides. Okay. I mean, that's what they did in Vietnam. They dropped horrible herbicides all over the plants and foliage so they could drop their cluster bombs, and that they used fire as a weapon, right? So it's never really resilient and ecologically friendly. It's just they give you the buzzwords to get you to onboard to what they want to do next. So this company raised all these forests, just ruined the ecosystem in Southeast United States. And now they're trying to come and plant in our beautiful mountains out by Yosemite. And they're doing this also in Washington State and in Oregon. And this is all part of, when there's an article out there, I think in Forbes, it says Bill Gates wants to thin 70 million acres of forest for forest health and resiliency. And they like to say, oh, the overgrowth is too much. It's led to more fires. They're giving you a narrative so that you're onboarding with what they want to do. And now what they're doing is they're taking our resources, and with a lot of these resources, they're creating these wood pellets that we can now ship to Asian and European countries so that they can use these sustainable green wood pellets because they're part of the Kyoto Accord or the Paris Agreement, right? It's like, we're going to be sustainable. It's just a brand new market is all it is. It's a brand new market. And again, they pollute our environment. They tear up the ecosystem. They ruin the balance of nature in our forests. And I'm calling it as I see it. It's awful. So we've been trying to fight this. There's a documentary called burnedthemovie.com, and it talks all about Drax and what they've done in the past and how much they've polluted and just ruined forests. And now they're trying to come here. So that's something else I've been trying to keep my eyes on and get involved with. So
there's a lot of layers here. There's much to unpack, and I appreciate that we have you as a presenter today, and I'm sensing we could listen to you for hours, many hours. I do have another presenter booked for today, so we will transition to that presenter shortly. Mellowcat, how do people get in touch with you? What are the best websites, contact information, etc.?
I'm going to put it in the chat here. So Mellowcat, if you can see the spelling of my name here on the screen, it's this way with the letter K, Mellowcat. You can go to bitshoot.com, which is an alternative channel, and then you / Mellowcat with the spelling, all one word. That's what you can find my channel. But then I've been started using Substack. I prefer this because I can put old videos and hyperlinks to old videos and resources that I've had. And by the way, always check the description of my videos because I have links and resources galore that you can play with. But Substack, I don't know how if you search on Substack Mellowcat, you should find me. And I have the best way to reach me is that way. People that usually reach out in a comment or the messaging, they'll let me know who you are, and I will try to get some more tutorials going, and then we can be in touch that way.
My understanding, Mellowcat, is that there's at least one person in the chat here. They have Zoom meetings talking about these issues, and they may want to invite you to be a guest at their Zoom meetings. You're receptive to that?
I am receptive to that, yes.
Okay. Our other presenter today, Mellowcat, is Stacy Beulah. She's a researcher from Alberta, and I've seen her both in person and in online meetings sharing knowledge about carbon capture and so much more. So actually, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce you two. Hello, Stacy. This is Mellowcat. Mellowcat, Stacy. Go ahead.
Hi, my video. Nice to meet you, Stacy. I'll mute up now.
Yeah,
and I'm listening. I might turn off the camera for a moment to blow my nose, but then I'm
great. Well, you know what? I love that you went before me because you took away a lot of fear that I had in the presentation that I'm going to be delivering right now, because I appreciate the no bullshit factor. Thank you. Because that's where we need to get to, because we're running out of time and we need to be acting and we need to be doing things, and we need to start. I've been letting fear, mistrust, a lot of awful feelings kind of prevent me from working with other people, because I'm not sure of where their allegiance is, and I'm not sure what they stand for, and I want to be aligned with them on absolutely everything. And one of the big things that I've come to understand is that there's not a lot of people who actually understand what is totally happening. And so the people are scaling up, and they're trying to scale up as fast as they can. And shame on me for, because of their lack of knowledge or understanding of it, being fearful of them. They just didn't understand what we were up against. And So it's actually so nice to understand that there are people out there that are doing the research, they're doing the digging into all of the weeds of all of this and are calling it out, because it's really scary to do that. And it's intimidating because we're not talking, it's not like, you're having a fight with the hardware store down the street because they took a little bit of your money or they did something wrong. We're talking about the United Nations. We are talking about the largest corporations. We're talking about our government. We're talking about the entire system that we live in and people that we gave our trust to. So it's been a really weird time. And yeah, money. And that for me, so myself, I live in Alberta. To those who I haven't met before, thank you for taking the time to come on the call tonight, because I know that there's probably a bunch more interesting Netflix shows that they've been creating to distract you. So thank you for caring about our planet and about our kids and our grandkids and what's happening here. There's all this intentional divide that's happening in politics right now. Is happening through very well-funded organizations that are trying to pit us all against each other. And if you don't support the LGBTQ community, then you can't be a fighter for the environment. Or if you don't support this, then you can't be this. And it's like, no, you know what? All of this is just to make us hate each other, and it's to make us fear each other. They're pitting the indigenous against colonizers, and it's being educated in our schools. Our kids are being taught to hate themselves and that humans are gross and that we are so destructive for this environment and this planet. And sure, there are some really crappy things that people do, because if it doesn't have people that are keeping it in check and people that care about it, then things do run amok, and it's all for profit and it's for control. And it's our job as citizens to care about what the future for our kids looks like. And that's where, like, I literally gave up a very nice paycheck for a job that I loved. And I loved my job because I got to learn about every single industry that our country needs to operate. So the pulp and paper mill, the steel mill, construction, transport companies. And so I got to kind of live the Discovery Channel dream, but it taught me a lot, because I got to be on these sites firsthand and understanding how they function. And it gave me the eyes to kind of see what was happening and how all of these organizations were adopting different terminology and different goals and their environmental social governance goals, which sound lovely and sound great, because then, yeah, everybody is going to have a scorecard. They're going to be judged on it. But it's only going to be the ones that are truly have the cash to be able to survive at the end of the day, which is wrong. So anyway, I made a presentation and I'm going to share it today. Now I did put this together. I've got a bunch of different presentations that I kind of put all together into one, and I'm just going to share screen and kind of walk you through it. Okay. Let me know when you can see my screen. Mellow Cat, I'm pretty sure we're gonna become best friends. Not gonna lie.
Had a hunch that you two would love each other.
That's great. I'm meeting the best people on this journey. You know what? I've been ostracized for so long and doxxed and harassed, and I don't care anymore. I'm stepping in my truth, and people can disagree with me, and that's fine, but it's so liberating. So just do it with boldness. I mean, now is the time. And actually, I'm happy in my own company. I've got my family, my cats, my chickens, and so it's okay. The world doesn't have to like me. I'm just going to keep calling it as I see it. Okay, I'll mute.
Awesome. Your screen is showing just great, Stacy. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So just like yourself, Catherine, I want to put that disclaimer out there. I am not the expert. I am a mom. I am a person that was employed with a big ass bad corporation. I'm not anymore. I am trying to figure out who I'm going to be when I grow up. And in the meantime, I'm doing some research and trying to help humanity. Yay! So I want you to be curious. I want you to understand where bias comes from, and do some research. Be your own investigator. Don't just take what global news and CBC and the mainstream, even YouTube videos now, they know that the mainstream has lost their edge. So now they're funding some really talented video productions on YouTube and different podcasts to do the same job. So you got to really be able to think and consider, like, where's the money coming from? What's behind it? And again, I don't know all of the answers. I don't have visibility to everything. There may be some top secret military threats or something like that I'm not aware of. So I'm just sharing what I've been able to put together because I've been asking questions to our government and I'm not getting any answers. So I have to do it myself. So I do want to put a warning out there. So in Canada, we have a bill called C226. So it is the National Strategy Respecting Environmental Racism and Environmental Justice Act. This received royal assent on June 20th, 2024. It was introduced by Elizabeth May. And what this is all about is basically, if you push back on some of these things that Mellow-Cat and I are speaking about, you could be called an environmental racist because you are, putting information out there that goes against the different agendas that are occurring. So this actually has passed. So it says the act requires government to consult with affected communities, particularly marginalized and Indigenous groups, to create a strategy that includes measures like potential amendments to federal laws and policy. The goal is to ensure fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people in environmental decision making. So when you go into this and you take a peek at this, so the content of this particular bill that's passed and has royal assent, the content and the strategy. So under section B here, it says, we're gonna have some measures that can be taken. So that kind of speaks to what you're talking about in terms of cumulative effects, right? Like of things that have been happening have been happening for a while that need to be addressed. I get it. But who's going to be that determining factor? And then at what point, because I've been hearing all rewilding and, getting back to pre-industrial state before agriculture came here and to North America. So that is, anything that we've done with agriculture, they want to kind of reverse it and get it back to just when Indigenous were here. But I think, there's a lot of speculation as to, like, is that where we need to go? Is that what the end game needs to be? And who's determining that? That's what I kind of like to understand. I have been doing some digging behind that to try and understand, because what does that mean for life of everybody that's here? And not just Indigenous, all of us. And again, it's this thing that's creating this big divide, and it's we've been living in that forever, and it doesn't need to be like this. Like, it's frustrating. But when you look at this, it all comes down, and they're using money because it is a frustrating factor, and it's going to get worse because people are struggling, and we are starting to struggle, and they're making us struggle intentionally. So compensation for individuals or communities that have had environmental racism. So one of the things that's passed just recently here in Canada is this clean drinking, the First Nations drinking water settlement, which is approximately $1.5 billion of compensation paid out because of, the lack of access to clean drinking water, which we know that this comes into the conversations that are had on CBC and with our government and whatnot. And we do know that there are some nations that are in our country that money has not made it to, water solutions being offered to the people, and which is ridiculous. Like at this time and age, and how much money has been spent and provided for different amenities, where does it all go? Well, we don't have transparency to that. Anyway, that's a side topic. But it's interesting. So when you start doing research and you bring up certain topics, I just put in 80 million because originally when I watch Apache Television Network, and I watch CBC, and I watch Global and different content, and 80 million kept coming up. So if you do a quick search, and again, this just takes us down a different rabbit hole other than the geoengineering, but 80 million, it looks like there's been a whole bunch of different payments for $80 million to a bunch of different, and this is just a little small list of it right now, a whole bunch of payments that are being made all over North America right now. So and again, I have my little fear guy here. So who's paying for all of this? And then what does that do to society? It creates an angrier world, just like Klaus Schwab said. So, ultimately, when people disassociate themselves from the government, you're just doing yourself an injustice, because it's all of us that pay for this. It's the people that work that are paying for this, and we're running out of money. So when we go into the topic of carbon capture, so it's this is what we were talking about today. So I kind of went down a little path there, the environmental racism, and that it takes you in these little offshoots while you're doing research. This is the hard part about all of this, and even going through the government documentation, because there are so many different spider webs that you have to go down and read to understand what the heck they're doing and who's connected to it. So what is carbon capture? Carbon capture is a process of trapping carbon dioxide produced by burning fossil fuels or other chemical and biological processes, and storing it in such a way that it is unable to affect the atmosphere, with the aim of mitigating the effects of global warming. Large amounts of greenhouse gases will need to be removed from the atmosphere via carbon capture. So this is a term, or the from Oxford Language, when I just Googled it. What is carbon capture? So this is what comes up. So when I'm doing my research and I'm trying to understand which direction to go and what to look up, I look for the key words, because they're using words against us these days to confuse us, or make it a word that is like something that we definitely all have different kind of perceptions of, so that we argue about it. But so if we look at this, so what's carbon capture for fossil fuels? So, well, the burning of fossil fuels. So fossil fuel emits emitters of CO2 that should be captured. So this is me using ChatGPT. So when I'm doing my research, and please note, ChatGPT is biased, so you have to kind of learn how to play with it, because it'll try and take you down one train of thought. So you got to kind of start to learn how to see bias, I guess. But here, so we got like power plants. So, any of those facilities, the industrial facilities that you see that, have all of the stacks that are burning and using heat. So those are emitting CO2 that they claim that needs to be captured. Oil and gas operations, transportation. So that would be like our on-highway trucks, our vehicles that we drive. And residential and commercial heating. So those are the fossil fuels they're talking about. Chemical processes, so combustion, cement production, metal production. So those all use a lot of heat. So they're burning off a lot of CO2, or emitting CO2. Chemical manufacturing and fermentation. So these are all the chemical processes that they deem are areas that need CO2 capture. And then when they put biological processes, it's like, okay, well, what are the biological processes that need to be captured? and interesting enough, you get some different things that come up on ChatGPT when you put this, when you ask a couple more questions about this, but it says respiration. So animals, humans, and even plants emit CO2 as a byproduct of the cellular oh my gosh, I can't talk. Respiration. This is a natural process and it is essential. Decomposition, so microorganisms breaking down, so our trees that are breaking down in the forest and providing nutrients back to the soil. I guess that's creating CO2 that they want to capture. Fermentation, so that's brewing and winemaking through CO2 of fermentation of yeast and bacteria. And then digestion, so I guess that's where we're coming into our cow burps and farts. And I had to put a picture of that cow because he's super cute. I'm not for that mentality. So what is carbon dioxide? So this goes back to, school and our biology classes, at which I never paid attention. I was probably skipping class, but now I'm paying attention. So what's carbon dioxide? So it's one carbon compound, compound with formula CO2, in which the carbon is attached to each oxygen atom with a double bond. It's a colorless, odorless gas under normal conditions. It is produced during respiration of animals, fungi, and microorganisms that depend directly or indirectly on living or decaying plants for food. So I thought this is a really cool picture of kind of the cycle of life. And when it comes to our oceans and whatnot, that sun plays a really
Stacy, can I just interject for a sec? So
yeah.
you've spoken some about how carbon dioxide is important for plants, but then also the sun's light, that sunlight, that radiant heat energy, that's part of photosynthesis as well. So the carbon dioxide's needed, as is the sun's light. Am I on the right track?
You are.
Yes. Okay. 100%. So this is very interesting that they're identifying all the way carbon dioxide is used or produced, and that implies to me that they're going to try to control it. Anyway, please keep going.
Well, it's just it's good for us to think about all of the things that play a role in creating the elements of this earth that we need, right? And the sun is a pretty critical one. And back to the geoengineering conversation we're having, if they're blocking the sun, all of the rest of these things suffer. And our sun is our life. So we kind of need it.
Can I say one thing really quick to that? Just it's on my mind. It's very important. What I'm finding is that also a new market is CRISPR engineering. It's huge. It's exploding. They talk about CRISPR engineering coral and CRISPR engineering insects. They're CRISPR engineering mosquitoes. So what I'm finding is that if they can kill off all natural life, then the billionaires who are invested in this technology get to put out the CRISPR engineered, genetically modified versions. And that is a conversation I've been having with a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up. High five. Yeah. So again, our air, very important. And when you take a look, this is like the air we inhale and then the air we exhale. So how much is carbon dioxide and how much when we're breathing air out and in, it's really important to just see how much of an impact that is. It's quite interesting. We have nitrogen and that remains constant, and then our oxygen content obviously differs when we're just breathing. So I just thought it's a good reminder.
That's a useful chart, Stacy, because I remember being a youth and basically they would say you breathe in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide, but really the reality is more like this chart here. And I remember thinking when I took life-saving training that we're breathing into a dummy, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm breathing carbon dioxide into this dummy, aren't I? Trying to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But really, we actually are breathing out some oxygen. It's just less than what we took in.
You got it. So here what I'm trying to show. So there's a really cool tool that I've been using, and it's the Google Ngram. And what it is it takes books from it's downloaded a ton of material from libraries, and then so it's got from books, it's got from movies, it's got from the internet, and you can put in words and you can see when they start to show up in society. It's a really neat tool. Obviously, like with the internet, you have a little bit of inflated hits because the internet's just made everything explode. But this is a really neat way of kind of looking at things to determine, okay, like when did these words come into play so that it starts to kind of plant seeds in our brain? Because, you know, how we are modified in terms of our thought, it's, you know, through art, it's through books, it's through music, it's through the movies that we watch, it's through the media that we take in. And then what we do is we repeat those conversations. We repeat those conversations to our neighbors on the street, and then that's how the, you know, the cycle just keeps going in terms of the conversation. And so what I've been using this tool for is, as I'm doing my research, I plunk in the words and then I see you know, when is there any correlation to kind of the programming that we're receiving? So the term greenhouse gas really started showing up just before the 2000s. Like it was like 1984, I believe, that it really started coming into the mix. And greenhouse gas, so if you just do a ChatGPT search, it says, okay, greenhouse gas is a type of gas on Earth's atmosphere that traps in heat. So again, remember that ChatGPT has a bias, so it's telling us that it's trapping in this heat. Now, I'm not a scientist, probably is trapping in some heat. I don't know the exact science. I'm just showing you how I go through this. But the gases that they're calling out in this greenhouse gas, which was behind fear-mongering campaigns, is carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor. So that's the greenhouse effect. So that's basically, you know, you think of those domes and how, you know, the gas goes in and it keeps the temperature hot inside your terrarium. I can see that there's some people that are maybe my mom's age in here. So we had terrariums before. So yeah, I guess kind of using that principle a little bit. This was the lady that actually did that with a terrarium the first time in 1856, this Eunice Newton Foote. And it's interesting to me because it is interesting, but when you start doing research, you're going to start seeing that a lot of these people have very influential families and very influential connections to very influential people in government or whatever. So this particular woman, she is a distant relative of Isaac Newton. So the guy had the apple dropped on his head. But when I pulled her up, because I wanted to see, well, who's talking about this greenhouse effect? Way back, you can see a little teeny tiny blip in this chart. So I'm like, that means that it showed that some of these terminologies were showing up before the 1800s and then a little bit forward. So it was this woman that came up with this. So this Eunice Newton Foote. But when you go into her Wikipedia and you see, okay, well, what are some of the things about this lady? So she is a women's rights activist. She believes in equity, inclusion, anti-alcohol, and she's an environmentalist. And lo and behold, when I put in her name, look at the hits that she's getting. So they're using this lady's historical footprint of, you know, her environmentalism with the youth of the culture today to help propagate the greenhouse effect. And so it shows, you know, and it ties you to that emotional connection of, you know, if I believe in women's rights and the DEI movement, like, and I see that, you know, this was a woman that was suppressed because she didn't, you know, wasn't recognized and didn't get her ideas heard until now, you know, it feeds that whole kind of piece, and then the kids are gravitating to it, and the cycle just keeps perpetrating, like it, or carrying through. Like, so that's why I did, the whole kind of circular economy, circular reference, that they're just taking pieces from history and bringing it forth. So then we've got our friend. So this is the kind of the buildup. So I know we're talking about carbon capture, but this is all important because it's pieces of, how did we get here? So it's talking about climate change and when did that term come in, and how did that emotion get planted inside of us? Well, we have this little girl telling us that, appealing to our emotion as moms, that the house is on fire and we need to save this planet. So when I pick up on this, I say, okay, well, we got a publisher here, and I use that funky tool to check out the last name Thunberg to see, well, did that name grab any hits for me? Supposedly this fellow isn't related to her, but they've got a lot of things in common. She's an environmentalist, a botanist, very, very well-connected man. And that was back in the 1800s. And he was going around to all the different colonies and studying the plants and flora. I just find it quite an interesting connection. So, but these are the rabbit holes that you'll go down sometimes when you're doing the research, but it's quite fascinating, to be honest, but it also can be very time consuming and get you a little bit distracted. Does for me anyway. And this will show you one more thing. So again, back to the whole Penguin Random House. And if we're thinking about government influence and where does this all kind of like, and what's behind it, one of the common things that I'm seeing is a lot of the content of books that are out there right now in our schools and in our universities. Penguin Random House is a massive publisher. Penguin Random House is not owned, or they're owned by a company called Bertelsmann, and they have had to do a complete rebranding because they were very successful during World War II with Nazi propaganda for the Reich. And I find that so the Mohn family is called out in this. So when I go down these little rabbit holes, it's to understand who's writing the content, who's supporting these books, because to get a publisher to support the books that are being written, they have to usually be aligned with the content that's going out. Just a little piece on the bottom, because I was trying to look up some information, and I'm starting to see a lot of things about the swastika and Nazi, and you can see all of this with the different political parties. And that's the unity that I'm seeing, is that on the right, the left, the blue, the red, everyone's afraid of the Nazis because that seed's been planted in our brain that we need to be afraid. And then there's a rebranding going on right now with another narrative there that the Nazis were actually good people, and it's like, and so it was the term, the symbolism was used for good, and so there's some symbolism protection going on. So that's a whole other rabbit hole. But to understand who the political alliance is behind the stories that are getting published, or the broadcasters that are out there, you got to dig deeper. So if we look at our own country and we take a look at the whole, back to the global warming and climate change, and I go back to that Nagram viewer and I type in the words there, I put in that. So I've got climate change, I've got global warming. So we can see, like, in 1984, it skyrocketed, the whole the terminology, and it started it had little blips. So these particular words, maybe they were used for different contexts, but those words came up before in some books back in the 1700s, and then before the 1800s, and then they just skyrocketed. So that means that people were talking about it beforehand, and then now they're executing it, potentially. So who was our prime minister at that time in 1984? Well, that was Mr. Trudeau, Senior, and he that's the year that he actually stepped down from the Liberal Party. And there was a fellow named John Turner that stepped in for 3 months. And then Brian Mulroney took over, and the trajectory kept going up. Ronald Reagan was the president in 1984 in the States. And I just grabbed some comments that come from the chat GPT there, just, that he was a Republican and he was interested in, he started his political journey as a Democrat, but then he switched over to a Republican. So as you do this journey, you learn some really interesting things. Then I've gone to 2003, where I really noticed it, like really shooting back up again. Then we've got John Chrétien and Paul Martin going in. A lot of so this is 2006, and that's when our Alberta Land Stewardship Act and our governance for our land rights started changing as well in Canada. 2003, it was George Bush down in the States. And then interesting enough, I'm showing you the buildup of the fear behind the carbon story. So then we got Al Gore, and he's doing, in 2006, he put out that Inconvenient Truth, talking about global warming and, that we were in a really bad state and we needed to do something about it. Fast forward to the future, and he actually has been getting called out for having a whole bunch of investments in heavy polluting organizations. So now, are you afraid yet? The fear has been built up. So create the fear and then bring forward a solution. Dun, 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 dun! We've got carbon capture with Bill Gates and friends. And so in our own province, we've got Bill Gates just recently, so December, he invested $40 million into Deep Sky, which is direct air capture. So we got carbon capture, we got direct air capture. So they're trying to put in a direct air capture facility in Innisfail. And so Bill has given them a bunch of cash. So when we talk about carbon capture, so just like what Mellowcat was saying, so in 2009, the Global Institute, the Carbon Capture Institute, was created, and this was created by the Australian government. And we've got carbon capture, we've got carbon capture storage, and what they want to do. So if we read this, it says, carbon capture and storage refers to a suite of technologies that capture and store the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide and stores it safely and permanently underground so that it does not reach the atmosphere and contribute to climate change. So who was involved in this? So this was the founding members included the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Japan, and China, as well as companies such as Alstom, Chevron, and ExxonMobil. And again, they're just naming a few, but these are some pretty heavy players coming to the table to create this carbon capture business. In Alberta, in 2015, we have the Quest project with Shell. The TELUS World of Science, I remember taking my kids there, and there was a whole kind of like a massive display that was showcasing what carbon capture was. And I remember standing on this clear floor, this clear glass floor, and looking down at the carbon that was being underground. And so they spent a lot of money on this to try and educate people to see it as a scientific advancement, which it is, and to start to get us to adapt and adopt it. So this is a facility that is in Fort Saskatchewan. It's out in, it's been there since 2015, and it collects carbon from their industrial plant and then sequesters it down to the ground. Now, the interesting thing when you look at some of the reporting on how much energy it takes for the sequestration that's actually happening, takes more energy than the actual sequestration that they're putting down into the ground. So it's kind of like a negative, I guess, a negative situation because it's taking more energy to put that carbon down into the ground. So then we go into this carbon pricing dashboard. So all of us, we've been talking about carbon capture. It's all over the news, and Carney basically putting a block on the carbon tax just for a little bit while just moving it to zero. But the thing is that, all of this carbon pricing actually started in Finland and Sweden, and like in 1997, I believe. That's where they introduced the concept of starting to charge people for this, because that's where some of the technology and idea creation was coming from, was over in Europe. And then where did they hit us with the carbon pricing? Well, first in Canada, because there was a lot of wealth in Canada. And so this is a way to take from the people that have a higher quality of living, to take our quality of living down, to pay for the carbon capture movement, because we need to have this price on pollution. So when we take a look at the different countries and what they've contributed, and I've also got an Excel chart that I've been charting all of the countries around the world, and when they started paying or charging their citizens for carbon sequestration. And interesting enough, like India, China, the Middle East, they don't charge a carbon tax. We are getting hammered in Canada, and that's why everybody is being pushed into poverty right now, because every single thing that we need is transported by something that uses fuel or heating our homes. So we're getting penalized from living in this country, and because of whatever the resources we have, or maybe it's because we're too nice, we're too passive. They know that we're not going to push back. So that's the thing. We need to start finding the courage and saying enough is enough. This is absolute crap. Because if this election all happens and then everything is reinstated, or they just move it to now an industrial tax, which we pay for anyway, because no business just eats that tax. They put it onto us. Like everything ripples down to the people that are paying the bills. So we got to stop getting tricked by their language. We end up paying for it. So here, they want it to go to, it's on our federal government's website, to $170 per ton. So by 2019 is when this all started for us. And we are already, and if you think about it, Sweden, Norway, Finland, they've been doing it since 1997. And we've already doubled how much we've spent into these green slush funds. It's crazy. And then the math is like a 427% cost of living increase for us, and that's cumulative. So it'll be higher than that. And that doesn't even take into consideration monopolies that are not being enforced, and the pricing that they're gouging us with, and all the other problems we have right now. So the government is not doing their job to protect us, the citizens. They're protecting the corporations. So what if I told you that CO2 is actually in demand? So where is it being used? Well, mining is a huge thing that we keep hearing about, and they want it to get mining and they want to get going. And we need to get more activity going on, because we need to get this green technology. And so to do that, we need to mine and we need to do all these things. Well, they're using CO2 for blasting. And if you look at this from this website of the CO2 blasting company, the word they use, it says harmless to the environment. CO2 is harmless to the environment and human health. Isn't that a little bit of a contradiction to what we're being told? Call it crazy. Here are the other areas that use CO2. So it's used in a lot of industrial products, so refrigerants, welding, plant or water treatment. CO2 stabilizes the pH of water. Carbonated beverages, so your beer, your pop, all of that, your fizzy or your soda streams that you got, that's CO2. The metal industry, fire extinguishers, it's used in chemical and pharmaceutical applications, and electronics. Now, this is a big one. So this is something I really need people to think about here is, so it's circuit board assembly, surface cleaning, and semiconductor device manufacturing. Semiconductor device manufacturer. So we keep hearing about China wanting to take over Taiwan and a big fight because like Taiwan is where all the semiconductors are made and all of that stuff. Semiconductors can be made with graphene. And this is a technology that's being researched right now and being created. So CO2 is a component because carbon creates graphene. Semiconductors can be made with the capturing of CO2. So this is for technology. This is for technological advancements. So this is the big one. This is the little nugget sitting right there, right in front of us. And then enhanced oil recovery. So that's like fracking. They shoot it down and they can get better production out of the different drill sites. So enhanced oil recovery. So that's when they pump the CO2 down there, it fills in those cavities and it gets the excess oil out. And then, for blasting, you can use liquid CO2. Here's right off the World Economic Forum's website. So what are some of the industries that are desiring carbon dioxide? Well, this new breakthrough. So watch for that term, breakthrough. Every time you see breakthrough, think of Bill Gates. Bill Gates' company is Breakthrough Energy. And that's where all his different little companies are that are out there that he's trying to transform our world into a futurist planet. So they're looking at, carbon dioxide fuel conversion is within reach. So this research is supported by Shell through MIT initiative. So right on the World Economic Forum's website, CO2. Here's another one, Carbon Cure Technologies. So it's a company in Canada, and it is again partnered. So company is received funding through Sustainable Development Technology Canada, InnovaCorp, Green Soil Investment, Pangaea Ventures, Breakthrough Energy Ventures, Microsoft, Climate Innovation Fund. So it's the same players. They just changed the names so that you think they're different companies, but they all own each other. So this is where they're using CO2 in concrete, I believe. Yeah, so this is Carbon Cure holds more than 120 patents related to carbon mineralization and CO2 storage in concrete. So this is where they're putting CO2 in concrete because carbon, when it's converted into graphene, has got the molecular strength of like a honeycomb, like the hexagon, which is the shape of that bees make for their honeycombs. So it's a super, super strong bond. And so this is why people are super excited about graphene, because there's some neat things you can do with it. I'm not saying that all of it is bad. This is carbon capture, capturing the carbon to get a new base stock to create graphene, which is nanotech. So we'll go there in a sec. Praxair Canada, So this is a company that actually has facility out by the carbon sequestration plant. So you hear Danielle Smith here in Alberta talking a lot about Linde. They're a company that they sell CO2. They need CO2. And so they are very much interested in carbon capture because it's the product that they sell to all these different companies. I just thought it was quite interesting because they started as a Germany company, then they moved to, I'm having a brain fart for the flag there. And if anybody knows, please, the domiciled company, but now a lot of these companies are all headquartered in London in the UK. So where does this lead us to? So now this is leading us into CO2 and how it's being used. So for graphene. So this is right in Edmonton. So Graphene Leaders Canada. So this is a fellow doing his podcast, getting coverage on CBC radio, talking about graphene and how exciting graphene is. I'm not going to say that graphene is not exciting. It's exciting, but we're paying for the scale up of this. And if I would like to start my own business. I have to get investors and I have to make sure that those investors are aligned with the direction of where I want to bring my company. I want to show what the profitability is, right? And I have to then pay them money to be an investor with me. We're not investors. They're stealing from us to fund this new whole industry. And that's the part where I couldn't stay working at my job anymore because I knew that everyone's life is being eroded and my kids' future is being eroded to pay for the scale up of this industry. And it's wrong. Use your billions of dollars that you already make and invest it. If you believe that this is a product that's super exciting, then use your shareholder and your stakeholders' money. And stop using our pension fund unless it's something that is going to be a product that humanity is okay with. We have not been asked if we want to be converted into transhuman things. So this is where graphene goes. Graphene is a allotrope of carbon consisting of a single layer of atoms arranging in a hexagonal nanostructure. The name is derived from graphite. It's not the same thing though. And the suffix "ene", reflecting the fact that the graphite allotrope of carbon contains numerous double bonds. Transhumanism, nothing to do with sexuality at all. Transhumanism is the position that human beings should be permitted to use technology to modify and enhance human cognition and bodily function, expanding abilities and capacities beyond current biological constraints. This is not about getting chipped. This is about smart dust. So graphene is a material that was created for an application as well called smart dust. It was created for DARPA, which is the military industrial complex. And smart dust, neural dust, MEMS, this is all, it's just, they use different words so that people, can't put it all together. And that's how they keep us confused. So smart dust is a material, and this woman, it's on YouTube. It's just a quick little 4-minute video, and it is a wonderful video about the capabilities of smart dust and the Internet of Things. So what this smart dust it's dust, it's a little material that gets put into our atmosphere, it gets put into our water, it gets put into our food, it gets put into our soil, and they are collecting data from it because all of them have a GPS communication, well, MEMS frequency that will send out little information nodes. I highly recommend that you watch some of the videos that are out there. When people hear the term smart dust, they're like, oh, it's conspiracy theory, a crazy tinfoil hat. And it's like, and it does sound crazy, but this is all about quantum computing. So what these do is that they get sprayed all over. And then so how it was created. So in this lady's video, when she's explaining why it was created for DARPA, it was made so that if there was an area that had high forest cover, they could spray it over top with an airplane. It would land on the people, the soldiers that were down there, and then they had visibility to where they were. Yeah. And so they could identify where the enemy was. So where this has evolved though, so is that they're like, okay, well, we've got this military operation. We could actually scale this up and make a whole bunch of money from it and use it for all these other things. And we could collect all this awesome data. And it's going to be so exciting because then we have all of the analytics to make society the best that it's ever been. So, what are they training our kids for right now at school? It's called geospatial engineering. So if you can envision that all of this smart dust goes onto a butterfly, it goes onto a tree, it goes onto the grass, it goes into the soil, it's in the root system of whatever you're growing, and it's sending out frequency or MEMS. What this does is it feeds up to the cloud and it builds. So when you hear about quantum computing, quantum ties in also with graphene and nanotech. And so this is building a huge quantum computer of all of us and all of our movements. Who needs this? That's what I want to understand. So I like data. I'm a nerd, obviously, but there's data that can help us for sure. And we like to do some sort of analysis, great. Where it starts to get disturbing is where the people that are creating this technology are coming up with the governance behind it. They are writing what the iOS standards are for all of this material. So that is scary because it's the people that are going to profit from it that are making the rules. And do you think that they're telling the full story? I don't know. Where does this lead for us as humanity? Well, here's a white paper that you can go and read. And it's the Carbon Trust and Coca-Cola white paper on your personal carbon allowance. So all of this, it creates the narrative that carbon is bad. We need to save you from carbon. And then we're going to enforce this good behavior with environmental, activism that in theory sounds good, but we're going to actually imprison you with this whole theory because the carbon is going to become your monetary system. And everyone will be given a ration. They don't call it a ration because we'd all be screaming louder, but they'll call it a personal carbon allowance, which they're trialing already in Europe. It ties into a social credit system, which is being used in China and India already. Qatar is getting ready to roll this out as well on their people. It's all over. This is global. Literally on our own government's website is Policy Horizon Canada. This is our federal government's website, exploring the biodigital convergence. All of the stuff that I just showed you and covered ties in this. So it's putting this technology inside of us so that they understand how we feel about things, where we're moving, what we're doing, how to ration or be able to ration us. And they will sell it to us that it is going to cure our cancer, that it's going to make us healthy. They're going to put they're going to say that they need medical devices to go on us. I don't believe they're going to need them. I think it's just another way to sell us stuff, but it all ties together. And if you think about us as humans, we are batteries. We're a pretty freaking efficient piece of machinery. What pumps like last as long as our hearts do and our lungs? We're pretty special. And I want to understand who gave the permission to augment us without asking. Why do we need this? Is it to protect us from the robots that they're making? I don't know. Is there a military concern that this is something that we need? And maybe they think that society can't handle it? We can see what you're doing. We want to understand why you're okay doing this to a perfect human that God created. But now you're going to turn us into transhuman beings. So they can't say that they didn't tell us. It's literally on our federal government's website that none of us read. But they're going to be able to say that they could, that they've already told us. It's all out there. So that's my presentation. I know it's really freaking heavy, but we are running out of time. If we're going to be in a smart city, they need lots of power and they need ways to connect us.
Stacey, this was a standalone presentation. I am blown away. I'm very impressed. I hope, Benita, you put this out there for everybody and make it shareable, viewable to everybody. It was so well done, and you pulled it together so succinctly. And you're speaking my language, but much more efficiently you're better articulated than I've been doing. But you summed it all up so nicely. You connected all the dots for us, and these people are not to be trusted. Bill Gates and his breakthrough energy ventures. I mentioned that Ken Caldera is his chief scientist. Ken Caldera is also known to be one of his biggest, most influential advisors. Ken Caldera, I shared a link in the chat here, used to work at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and this is where they explored various ways you could harm an enemy. One was putting hydrogen bombs in the water to make a tidal wave. Well, why not just drop the hydrogen bombs? And then he talks about, or we could just put pathogens in clouds and have them rain down on a population. These are the people we're dealing with. And I also put it in the chat that sometimes I get to the point where it's so tremendous, it's so massive, the corruption is so bad. As you were saying, we didn't ask for permission, but they're not asking permission. And what's most insulting is that we are funding our own prison. We are funding the prison infrastructure. We are funding the death of humanity and the ecocide of this planet. And so if I could just put it out here, I am working on my husband. I'm trying to find a way to get more of us to recognize that we need to starve the beast. We need to stop paying into these programs. We need to stop paying taxes, start using cash, start barter and trade, teach your children some skills so they can do the same, because this freight train is running out of control. And we could touch on the fog that was swirling around. I mean, they are coming hard and fast. And like you said, we are a beautiful creation. We are electric, electromagnetic. We are, and I'm still vibrating despite all of this. So we have, a chance, right? But we have to be strong in mind and heart, get out there and speak your truth. And you've got to pull out of this system fast.
I'd like to just share a little item that might give a smidgen of hope. I know it's not enough, but I'll just share something with you. I'm a member of the political party for my province, the current governing party, and we had an AGM event last November. And at that event, one of the motions that passed was to celebrate CO2 and recognize that CO2 is important to life and Alberta's prosperity. So although I know that the party making this resolution and passing this resolution is not yet enough to solve all our problems, I do feel it's a step in the right direction. What do you think, Stacey?
I think it's a step definitely in the right direction to acknowledge that, because that kind of has gone against what a lot of our municipalities have been passing, is all of these like smart city agendas and the the environmental initiatives, and spending all of these astronomical dollars that are going to enslave our children in the future, without having any the actual backing and data to support it. And they're just doing it based on virtue signaling. And one of the things that I would really love to see, and I know I've kind of talked to you about it, and I've been reading the document, we have something that's called the Species at Risk Act. And it was actually passed for the United Nations and the agenda that they want to, use on us to protect wildlife. But why can't we use it to protect humanity? Because they're hurting all our wildlife. They're hurting our trees. They're hurting all of the little critters that are out there. They're hurting our animals, our soil, everything. So why can't we use the Species at Risk Act to support ourselves, to support humanity? Because we literally are a species at risk. And when I think about who are the people, and right now they're all divided because of stupid politics, who are the people that we need to be uniting? I put down, we need mama bears. We need those feisty grandparents that really care about their grandkids. We need our Indigenous and our Indigenous leaders. We need our hunters and foragers. We need our environmentalists. We need these people that care about this stuff, because there's going to be people that love progression. They want to be a futurist. They want to live forever. They want to look like young forever and will do whatever. And so they'll embrace all of this technology stuff. But we need the people that are okay with getting a couple wrinkles, maybe not living forever and having your brain stored in a computer. We need them to fight with us. The challenge we have is the farmers, because they've done a really good job of programming our farmers to believe in the spray and for cloud seeding. And they're actually writing all these books for our kids, like educating our kids in the education system right now about the different types of clouds, and that the good that they're doing, and that they're normal, like the chemtrails that we're seeing and the fog and all of this. And cloud seeding is done to protect money. And I get it. We need food supply and all of that kind of stuff. I understand why cloud seeding is done if we need moisture and all of these things. But there's some really good scientists, and I know, Mellowcat, you mentioned Dane. I've talked to Jim Lee also, and I know they differ a little bit on opinions, but both of them have a wealth of knowledge, and they've been studying this for over 20 years. They know it's hurting us. And these are guys that have devoted their life to this. So
that leads me to want to say something that I've commented on before. I admire their efforts to get information out there. Yep. Geoengineering Watch and Geoengineering Viewer, Climate Viewer. I want to encourage everybody here to do something. You can do it immediately. Identify the names and the faces and the numbers and the addresses of the players involved in these various projects. If you are not comfortable with direct confrontation, now I'm sure some of you have probably heard that pilot confrontation. I went and talked to a cloud seeding pilot, and I was very firm, but I gave him information and he acknowledged it, and we had a little disagreement about it, but we need to start showing up and talking to them and meeting them human to human, to appeal to them, to reach them, to plant the seed with them. And the more of us that are making the phone calls and writing the emails, all of you, if you don't feel comfortable going into the office, leave a supervisor comment, write a template of a letter or an example of where it can be sent. Put a clear call to action. Here is my example letter that you can all send to this person at this agency. Here's their information. You make it really simple for people. That might be your strength. Your strength might be the letter writing and creating a template. It might be organizing lists of the players involved and making sure you get screenshots of their faces and contact information, because when that disappears online, it's very hard to publicly shame them sometimes too. So there are so many things that we can do right now. Another thing I would say is, personally, I'm just going to put this out there. I think we don't need to spend another dime on lawsuits or promises by politicians or NGOs. What I am sad to say is that a lot of the fundraising I've seen has not really led to all that much. I'm not going to say that there haven't been some successes along the way, but compared to the amounts of money, the millions upon millions of dollars that were raised, there's not a lot of results happening for me. So I want to say all it takes is being passionate. We need our men too. You were mentioning all these. We need our men as well to be the defenders, because I'm at home with a child, and I feel sometimes like I wish there were some men out there that would go fight this battle for me, so I could just take care of the house, make the food, make the sourdough, run my child to, healthy activities. And, so it's going to take all of us getting engaged, and there are many, many ways to do it. And you're right, the time is now. We are running out of time. And though I remain hopeful when I think about how just one person can start a ripple effect and inspire others to do a little bit more. I'm getting messages all the time. I'm thrilled. That keeps me going. So I still have hope, folks. And it's going to just take everybody putting in a little bit of elbow grease.
I have hope as well. And as I can see, there's more questions here. I know some people have to head out right away, though, so I do want to share this item with you so that you can view the recording of today's broadcast. What has been happening to me is I've been getting some of the email addresses through the registration, and I send out emails, but sometimes those emails are not getting to you because it ends up in your spam folder. So there's a couple of things you can do to make sure the emails I send out get to you. One is just register again at tinyurl.com/addressing geoengineering. Another is send an email to me at PedersenBenita@gmail.com. It can say anything. And in that email, it just makes it more likely that when I send an email to you, it'll end up in your inbox rather than your spam folder. And another is send a text. So the more that you, in a sense, pursue me, then the more likely you'll receive the recording from this video. So I encourage you to do all of those things and reach out. And I've posted that in the chat as well. So we'll be happy to share out the recording of this broadcast. Stacy, did you have a comment? And then we'll go to the first question.
I just, I would like, one of the solutions I'd like to see is us having another meeting very soon, and then sharing some more research and having a way that we can actually narrow it down to exactly like, and we're getting close. We are, because there's not just myself and Mellowcat working on this. Like there's a bunch of people that are looking at this. We're not alone. And we do have some fighters that are in our court that are willing to stand up for us and try and help. But the challenge is that we need to make sure, number one, we're respectful. Nobody wants a war. Like, we don't want a war. And they're trying to lead every day. They're trying to lead us into a war. We don't want a war. Wars only benefit the rich, which are the same people that are doing this. So we need to find unity somehow in a world that's really freaking broken right now. But maybe this will be a piece that can help us unify together instead of all of this political party stuff. I don't even want to vote because I don't even, sorry, no offense, but we need fighters that are willing to put their neck on the line and say, we're actually not okay with this. And we need to just keep going and pushing. Yeah.
One of the things
So
I would suggest is right now in Canada, we actually have an amazing opportunity to build relationships with future members of parliament because, of course, they're all campaigning. And so wherever you are, you could be helping your local candidate with the election, whichever candidate you feel you want to see win or the one you just think is going to win. And as you work on the campaign, you can be building that relationship. Building the relationship is key. If we're always oppositional or confrontational, it's hard to get through them. Whereas if we work on the campaign, we build the relationship. And at times, even during the campaign, we could say, hey, just so you know, I'm opposed to geoengineering. And I'm very hopeful that once you're elected, you'll, push for policy that opposes geoengineering. But just do it in a friendly, invitational way, because I think during the campaign, they'll refuse to take a stand on it. But if you've built a good relationship, then after the campaign, they very well might. What can I say? I'm an optimist.
I know, I love that. And also, let me say something. When I first moved here, I met with every county supervisor that I could that would meet me in person just to build a face to name connection. It was pleasant. You don't want to go in there armed with you can't convince them in one meeting of what you're trying to promote, but they do need your help. So if you can build a friendly rapport, it might be through a campaign if you have the time. It might just be setting up meetings to say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm just, maybe you bring one topic that you'd like to present and share. I brought a printout about Rockefeller and climate change scandals. It was a great paper done by IEEE. And I just said, I just want to leave this with you to take a look, because we had the climate action plan that was going to be passed. And so, but I was very, again, gentle, polite. They need you as an ally. I now have a relationship with my supervisors where when I reach out to them about a concern, they're taking the time to reach out to people to get the answers that I need, and they're sharing my concerns. That is very important as well. And to give them that support and that education, but short and sweet, to the point, because they get bombarded with a lot. So, but build that in-person relationship if you can, because they're going to know name to face, and that's good.
I just want to share this. So I have tried that. I'm going to say I went to 3 roundtables with my federal MP. So Mike Lake.
No luck.
I tried to give him the documentation that has the scientific proof of the harm that is being done by geoengineering, which he in the meeting made me feel like I'm a tinfoil hatter, and that you mean chemtrails? No. It makes you, it starts to get you angry, because I tried to give him the documentation. He's like, do you see how thick that is? I'm like, yeah. You think I have time to read all of that? And so to me, I'm like, this is probably one of the most important things, and it's harming the citizens, all of them, and you laugh at it, and you will not accept a document that is scientific proof. And so that's where we're at. And then our councils. So I have gone to speak to lots of our local councils out here.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? And I've even written to our Minister of Environmental Affairs. I've met with our Indigenous Affairs Minister. I've been trying, and
yes.
And then I get and then they set out all these little soldiers to say that Stacey Beulah is a conspiracy theorist and she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Remember, Stacey, we have to replicate people like you, because you're just one person, and there are not many Stacey Beulahs out there trying to reach their local representatives. It's not always going to be a walk in the park, but what I will say is the more of us that show them we are concerned about this, and maybe you don't bring the big printout right away, you just let them know you have some concerns. If they're interested, you'd like to, how can I help you learn more about this? I have an assortment of well-documented, reputable sources from, bring something short and sweet for them. But at the very least, going to them and saying how your concerns for something is you voicing to them that You have those concerns, and you are not one of those that are just going to roll over and consent to whatever they want to throw your way. So I hear you on that, because I was, ignored for many years at my old supervisor meetings, but I decided to try to build a friendly rapport, to get to know them, to say hello, and and then you start dropping the seeds. They will not be convinced in one face-to-face meeting. You just start to give them a little drip, 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 and hold their hand. And that's only one of many things we can do. Now, also, as you begin the written correspondence or the documentation or the blow, if they blow you off, I've had people blow me off and I've held them accountable and I've called them out by name and face. And that's embarrassing for them. I've also blind copied and CC'd other agencies, other representatives. For example, when I emailed with CARB and I was getting stonewalled, I then copied my supervisors. I copied the Tuolumne Pollution Control District. I copied an attorney from the Cal EPA, just so they could all see who was on the chain and who wasn't responding and who was dropping the ball.
Persistence pays off. So I've dealt with this as well. I've been in opposition with elected representatives and presented my views, and initially they put up that wall to me, and then there's other times the wall comes down. So persistence pays off, and building relationships. So let's just talk political strategy just for a moment, because I know there's a lot of people who are unhappy with our government and we would like to see lots of changes, but we have to be realistic on the changes that we can make happen. And so, for example, there's an MP known as Mike Lake, and he serves a constituency known as Leduc-Wetaskiwin. And when you look at the polling numbers for Leduc-Wetaskiwin, this is considered a Conservative Party of Canada safe zone. By the way, the source for this is a website called 338canada.com, which is pretty reliable. And in this safe zone, Leduc-Wetaskiwin, it looks like Mike Lake's going to win. He's going to win whether you like it or not. He's going to win whether you like him or not. Whether you like him or not is irrelevant. There's not enough momentum for another candidate to win. And if another candidate did win, it's most likely going to be a Liberal candidate. So that is not something I would hope for. Certainly not. So just something to think about. And so even though we have these candidates we're not 100% crazy about, it is strategic to think about who is most likely to win in the electoral district you're in. Reach out to that candidate, offer support. If you don't like them, sometimes you got to bite that tongue so you can build the relationship, because we can reach out to them later. So let's go to questions though. Mr. Robert Johnson, you've been waiting so patiently. You may have the first question. Please present it in 20 seconds or less.
Okay, might take more than 20 seconds, Benita. I started seeing patients in 1980s and 1990s who were getting fiber-like threads coming out of their skin, and we didn't know what the heck it was called, Magellan's. And we didn't really know what was going on. And I got into dark field microscopy in around 2000. And if you get to a book, and I'll put it into the chat, it's Dr. McKelcha, Anna McKelcha. She's got 2 books on transhumanism. And what we're getting is the chemtrails are sending down these little dust particles. They're actually miniature computers. And when I was seeing patients that were getting inoculated with the COVID, we were getting these long, they look like worm-like formations. When you look underneath the dark field microscope, you'll see these nanoparticles sparkling. And when you get the right frequencies, like opening up a garage door with Wi-Fi and the 5G, these nanoparticles form circuit systems that form little thread-like organisms within the body, and they turn us into transhumans. And everybody, I used to see it in the vaccinated people, because you're getting hundreds of millions of these nanoparticles in one injection. When you're breathing air, they're saying you're getting about the amount of a credit card of nanoparticles inhaled and eaten in 1 month. And we're all getting it. Now I'm starting to see unvaccinated people with these same type of things developing. And Dr. McKelcha has done research. If you use EDTA, it's a binder that will collect, and methylene blue. You can use them on a regular basis with ascorbic acid, vitamin C, and it'll destroy the nanoparticles. So we've got ways now of defending ourselves, and everybody should get onto this. If you're not sure whether you've got it, if you're living on the planet Earth, we've all been exposed to it. That's it.
Thank you, Robert. Oh,
I feel like it's my due diligence to say this. There are other perspectives out there about the blue, the methylene blue. I think it's really important that people look for all sides and perspectives of this particular treatment before they commit. To give you a little hope here, folks, I only eat raw garlic and drink kefir as my remedies at home. I still have mental sharpness. I still have my wits about me, my soul, my energy. So I want to make sure that we don't rush to solutions that are being peddled for payment. I think that there is a lot we can do if we simplify, we clean up our lifestyle at home, and we get exercise and real sunshine. I just felt like I had to say that because I think some have expressed concerns about Dr. Anna's research, and I think it's worth getting other opinions and really doing your research before you are putting unknowns into your body. Just, I had to say that, if I may. I'm sorry. It's important. We are under attack, but we have to be very cautious about throwing ourselves into something that might cause more harm.
thank you, Mellow Cat. Stacy, did you have a comment on that?
Robert, thank you for that. And you're right. I did have live blood analysis done to see that as well. And I've had a crazy amount of fiber that has, or the little like the Magellans that is like forming throughout mine. I've had my oxygen levels have been depleted. I could walk up and down the hill that I live on, no problem. I'm having a hard time doing that now. So I do want to figure out what that is, but there's a lot of solutions, Mellow Cat saying too, that are being offered that are actually nanotech, and they're building the narrative behind some of the materials that are actually bonding agents for the graphene. And so that it's kind of a mind, like if there's somebody that's trying to make money off of it, it's really important because like rare earth minerals are a term that you're starting to hear a lot of people talking about, and rare earth minerals with a certain mixture of them is actually nanotech as well. And so it's going into a lot of different products that's being sold as a health supplement because they've been buying up the health supplement companies, and then they've been putting in the nanotech into those as well, which is just it's just like it's an attack, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. But I really want to look at that book because I'm seeing the exact same thing that you said. You're bang on. Like it's a problem.
Another question we have, this one's from the chat. It's how can we protect ourselves from the dust, from the smart dust? Any thoughts on that? I like the sunshine suggestion.
If I may just say too, like when fear is their currency, right? That fear is the motivator for them. And sometimes I'm finding that fear can be exploited on both sides, right? So they tell you about one thing that's scary, and then they give you the solutions. And I think proceed with caution. I have learned to step away out of the supplement world because I used to take a bunch of supplements, and now for the last year and a half, 2 years or so, I've stopped because the more you learn, like you were saying, it gets bought up. They know, they'll pick your poison essentially, right? So, and I think also the way folks are. Yeah, so I'll just say that there are people out there that are also interested in using the fear that's being generated to then market, package, and sell you something. And sometimes, now I can't confirm this, I'm not the one looking under a microscope, but what I have heard from other people, there's FM8 is on BitChute and Substack, and he's suggesting that there are times that people have, and I don't know, I'm not an expert looking under a microscope. What I'll say is, sometimes the people that are looking under the microscope they misrepresent what they're seeing. Sometimes it can be air bubbles. Sometimes it can be liquid. Sometimes it can be crystallized salts, right? So we have to proceed with caution, get feedback from real people that that have tried something, but I proceed with caution on everything and really do your due diligence before you just rush into a treatment. Again, your bodies have natural chelators built in, okay?
Okay.
And if yeah.
Any comment on that, Stacy, or shall we go to the next question? We're good to go to the next question. Stacy mentioned having another meeting soon, a follow-up meeting of this. You know, we work together towards actions we can take. So I'm actually going to propose April 29th. I'll host it as an addressing geoengineering meeting. We'll have Stacy back. We'll have Mellowcat back, assuming you're available. We'll do some follow-up on what's been discussed tonight, have geoengineering as part of that discussion, carbon capture, etc., because I'm sensing we are not done talking about this subject, and we have to talk about the actions we need to take. Jacqueline, you may ask your question now. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Oh, hi. Actually, it's more of a, thank you so much for this. It's more of a comment. I just wanted to mention there is an organization called the In Power Movement. And I don't know if people are interested, I can put it in the chat for you, but it's started in Canada, and it's ordinary people who are sending out notices of liability on 4 causes that are international. So one of them is forced vaccination, one of them is 5G, one of them is smart meters, trespassing technology, and the 4th cause is geoengineering. So if anybody is interested, I can pop their website in the chat and you could share it out if people want to look into it.
Jacqueline, I am open to that. So tell you what I'll do. I'm going to open up the chat box now so that everyone can post. So you go ahead, Jacqueline, and post that in there. Thank you for sharing that with us. We're going to go to Carmen now with her question or comment. Go ahead, Carmen.
Thank you. First, I just want to say thank you, Mellowcat. You're always very interesting to listen to. And Stacy, you rocked it. So great job. I love all your information. It's always mind-blowing. The one thing that right now that we're fighting in our county right now is we just found out that right now it's in the process of rezoning the land from agricultural to industrial for the largest data center in the world. We just looked up the 15 largest data centers in the world, comparing to what they want to do here. And they're actually running out families that have been farming there for 3-4 centuries. And this data center that they're proposing is a $4 billion data center that will be triple the size of the largest data center in the world. And I'm just like, oh my God. They're all excited about it because of the money and everything else. They have not done any due diligence. We have a presentation on Thursday at Parkland County. This will be going for 3rd reading. I will be presenting and asking a lot of questions just because, and I know they're going to come back because there is a huge code of conduct going within our mayor and councils as well right now, which I just attended court with one of the counselors to watch today. But yeah, so I know what's going to happen is the mayor's going to say, well, we're just taking this in as information right now. And, you know, we're not making any decisions right now. We all know that mayors love to have a legacy before they leave, and this is going to be his legacy. So right now, I want to even just bring it out into the open, into the public, to let them understand, listen, this is way more than most people know about, because yes, I've been down many of the rabbit holes as well, like Stacy, and we know what this intention is for. And I know even our premier is pushing along with Kevin O'Leary for these data centers. And, you know, when they're pushing so hard for this great idea, we all have to step back and go, what the hell's behind this? Why are they pushing so hard right now? We know this is all about tracking. We know this is about tracking every inch of our life so that they can control in the end and lock us down for any reason that they want. You know, I have friends that have had their accounts, you know, cut off during the Ottawa truckers thing and everything else. So I've seen the repercussions of all of this. So I think right now, as you say, the call to action right now is to show up at your council meetings, because these things, of course, with ICLEI are being, slid in without people knowing about it and thinking that our council and mayor are in our best interest. No, they're not. They're bought off. And normally it is the administration that runs the show. Our mayor and council get the documentation from the administration, which the administration says they've done all the research, and get mayor and council to sign off saying, don't worry about it. We've done it all. It's great. You guys just need to sign on the bottom line. So I think we all need to start, like you said, Benita and Mello and Stacy, get a hold of your counselors, get a hold of your mayors, express to them your concerns, start getting involved. And I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys are showing up already. You guys are the choir, I know that. But we have to find some way of getting more people educated and understand, like you said, Stacy, we're in a red alert right now. We don't have any more time. We don't have time to strategize anymore. We need to start running through the town on fire, yelling, the firehouse is on fire, whatever it is. But we need to start losing our shit and being called conspiracy theorists, whatever we have to be. I don't care anymore. I'm the same as you, Mellow Cat. I don't care. We've been ostracized by our families for the last 4 or 5 years. We've been called every name in the book. Everything is coming to fruition, and they're still not going, you're right. I'm sorry. So you know what? Those aren't the ones we're here to save anymore. It's our children, it's our grandchildren, it's the ones that want to know. So yes, I thank you so much, you guys, for this, and Benita for putting this on. If we can get that copy of this tonight and we can share this and get this out with as many people as possible, this will make a difference, I believe. We just have to keep our vibrations high enough to understand that we can make a difference. It's just we have to go through the fire in order to get to the sun. Thank you.
And I want to make a comment to what you said, because like when we talk about these data centers, and this is the hypocrisy that drives me nuts, is because if you look into how much energy so if we're in an energy shortage, and energy and creating all of this energy is bad for our environment, but yet they want to create all of these massive data centers. And if you start looking at Google searches and how much energy that takes to create just one Google search, and how much the Snapchats and the TikTok and all the stuff that our kids are on, and keeping you on a computer screen or video gaming system. Do you need that gaming system to be faster? No, you don't. We don't. They need it faster. And that's for their freaking digital geofence security system that they're going to be putting around us. And so if people don't understand the technology that's out there, it's like we are being fed bull, and the energy that is needed for all of this data storage, data creation, all of the stuff, the oracles that they want to keep on us, to keep us in our information prison or whatever the heck that is. It's a contradiction to all of this narrative that they've been pushing down our throat and making us pay for. So it's super frustrating. Kevin O'Leary was at the UN Pact for the Future with the rest of his sharks and all of those people. They were at the United Nations Pact for the Future and participating in all of this. So I know, Benita, you're the Conservative Party, but we need like Danielle Smith and the conservatives across this nation to understand like what is happening, because it's wrong. It's wrong.
With the one for the data center here, the largest one in the world right now, I think, was 125 megawatts. And I think they talked about this one going to be 400 megawatts. And some of the concerns is the water, like how are you getting access to the water, the sound, what is the repercussions of all these data centers? Have you done an environmental impact assessment? Any of these kinds of things that can affect the people around them. And they have no repercussions for the farmers that are being kicked off their land for this, and not, given much. And even if they are paid out a big amount, it's not the point. The point is that majority of these data centers that you see around the world are way out away from all cities and development, so that there isn't repercussions down the road. Because I'm sorry, you've never built it this big
So you don't even know, and if we have another tornado come through, how does that look? Through a data center that's got all this cooling and everything else that they need to do. So yeah, it's quite scary. And I really hope that we can, make at least our council and mayors to kind of postpone this rezoning and get them to do their due diligence first before they decide to rezone. But when you're looking at $4 billion in a legacy, it's going to be hard sell, right?
What day is that, Carmen?
That's this Thursday, and it's at Parkland County, and it's going to be at 9 a.m. And of course, we've got a major blizzard coming conveniently. So
Are they
I'm not
letting,
quite sure
and
how
are
the
they
roads
letting,
are going to be.
are they letting people attend?
Yes,
For
yes,
now,
and
they put you
I'm
on a Zoom.
they may be putting it online as well.
Butts in the seats.
Carmen, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you, Stacy, for weighing in on that. Meadowcat, was there something you wanted to add to that? No, you're good for the moment. Okay, we're looking for other questions here. If there's someone else with a question or comment, we'll do a bit more time. It appears David Murray might have something. Go ahead, David Murray, if you can figure out how to unmute. Go ahead. You're still muted, David. I saw him waving at me, but he can't figure out how to.
David, it's the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you
Okay.
move your mouse, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
There are 21 items here that I have both history and answers for that have been mentioned tonight, but I'm not going to mention them because the most important thing is this. We all need to understand that you and I are the source of all authority, and government doesn't exist without us. Why do you think we still have elections? The long and the short of it is every one of our representatives has a job, and that is to seek our pleasure. And his second job is to instruct the bureaucracy to accomplish that end. We currently have the bureaucracy instructing our representatives because the bureaucracy has been invaded by interests other than our own. Now, there are so many really important things that I'm an old guy. I have a lot of history here. I have history of cloud seeding going back to 1963, where I lived across the road from 40 PhD researchers, and they were doing it there in 1963. That was before the international agreement that the Weather Control Treaty, where no nation would use weather control to impact other nations. But I'm not going to go through any of this. The thing is, you and I have to realize that what runs everybody's life is laziness and cowardice. And you can use your thesaurus to find any other words that you would like to substitute for those two things. Realize that the people on this forum are neither lazy nor cowardly.
Thank you, David. Thanks a bunch for that message. And it sounds like you have a lot of material to share. And so I'd like to invite you to share it to me if you wish at PedersenBenita@gmail.com. You've got quite a list there, so feel free to email it to me if you like. I'd be happy to review it and appreciate you being a part of this event and weighing in on the discussion. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the sooner that we wrap this up, the sooner I can get to editing the video, the recording, and getting it out to you. So there's a slight possibility that could happen tonight. It's more likely it'll be tomorrow or Thursday, but the sooner that we wrap it, we can get this recording. So thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to our presenters. I'll open it up for our presenters to add some final comments, and then we'll draw it to a close. So go ahead, Mellow Cat.
What a pleasure to be here. And I just loved, hearing the other presenter and just knowing that there are at least 100 of you out there that are passionate and that hung in there for a couple of hours. And it just, that feeds the soul. So thank you.
That certainly is encouraging. Okay, Stacy?
I just thank you for participating and listening to us and hearing the stories that we wanted to share with you. And hopefully it helps you understand some of this stuff. And then I'm not going to stop. So we need to keep fighting, and we need to be there for each other and just be kind and help each other. That's it. But we're running out of time, and I don't want to be a fear monger, but I once the data centers are up, I think we're in trouble. So
Okay. Thank you again to our presenters. Thank you everyone for being here. If you'd like to help me cover my Zoom costs, send an e-transfer to PedersenBenita@gmail.com. So far, our next meeting is scheduled for April 29th. If something changes, you will get a notice. Some people were suggesting we should have it sooner, but we're looking to do April 29th so far. So thanks again for tuning in, everyone. And again, to make sure you receive the recording, make sure it helps if you send me an email address so that you know my email is going into your regular inbox rather than into your spam folder. So that's PedersenBenita@gmail.com. You can also follow it up with a text. Include your email address in the text. That's helpful as well. My number is 780-349-0181. And so those are some ways to just reconnect. So thanks again, everyone, for being here, and just really glad you found value in this, and we need to figure out some next steps. So thank you, everyone.